All right. Last but not least, this will be our next talk from Denny. Here it goes. Hello.
Hi, Tim. Hi, Tim. Hi, everyone. It's exciting for me, and it's an honor to be here after all these great speakers.
Yeah, you kind of have some big shoes to fill. Not mine, but the other speakers were amazing.
No, also yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So you noticed I didn't say your last name because I didn't want to sound very bad. Would you mind saying your name for the audience?
Denny Biasiolli. It's a nightmare to book a table at every restaurant here. So
well, I guess in Italy you can, but in other places maybe not.
No, also in Italy. I assure
really?
you. Also in Italy, it's a difficult surname.
Yeah, I actually live in France now, and then when I say my name to French people over the phone, they're like, "Quoi? What is this?" Like impossible.
Yeah.
Anyways. Yeah. That's not about your talk. So I've been reading up on you, and you kind of like, let me just read this because there's so many things. You did Python, Django, React, Vue, Go, everything. And yeah. I love the few stack people that, or like the full stack people that then go to a Vue conference and then still be awesome. So how does it feel to you to be talking about something in Vue, even though you have all these other skills as well?
I like Vue and Vue.js since I went to a conference in Amsterdam, one of the first conference about Vue.js, I think.
Oh, you might have seen me speak there.
No, I don't know.
Do you know which year it was?
Oh, no. Maybe 3 years ago.
Yeah, I spoke at all the Vue.js Amsterdam conferences.
Okay.
Anyways, it was a long time ago.
Sorry.
And it was not memorable enough. It's all good. Because today you will be talking about Vuex, right?
Yeah, exactly. I try to make a simple introduction to this tool.
Yeah, because a lot of people really need it, but think it's a bit complex to put it in. And they'll probably using like all these different things to get it going. But I'm really interested in how you explain this. So, Are you ready to rock?
Yeah.
All right. So here is introducing Vuex from Denny Biasiolli.
Yeah,
almost
perfect.
Cheers.
See you later.
Thanks for watching this talk. As the title says, I will talk about introducing Vuex in your Vue.js projects. We will see the basic parts of a Vuex store and we will test it in a simple way. Let's go. But first, a few words about me. I am Denny. I'm a freelance full-stack developer working full-time for a company based in UK, Fingerprint Supervision, as a front-end developer. I'm from Italy, and as you can hear, my English is not so perfect. I'm sorry for this. In my spare time, before COVID, I was a volunteer in a retirement home, performing recreational activities like playing bingo. The example app of this talk comes from here. Here's the example app, a simple random number extraction with very basic graphics. I'm sorry for that, but this was intended to be used only by me or a few other selected volunteers, not yet on the big market. As you can see, we have a list of available numbers and big text displaying the currently extracted number. Oh, yeah, there is also another list containing the extracted numbers. Yeah, I know, I didn't mention the footer bar, but I will inspect that component later. Let's split our app in subcomponents. This app, for example, consists of 4 components. The header, displaying the app information like title and version number. The footer, we will talk about that later. The main component, this one on the outside, containing all our application logic, the 2 lists of numbers available and extracted, and the currently extracted number. The list component is the subcomponent and is a generic component displaying the list of numbers and a title. Everything is passed by props. Now let's look at the code. It's more interesting than this horrible mess. This is the main component, data function, containing the component state, our component state. As you can see, we initialize 2 lists. The first with the numbers from 1 to 90, and the second is an empty array containing the extracted numbers. It's empty when the application starts. Now we have a computed value returning the extracted numbers sorted by value. Please remember we are calling this section components getters because we are getting values that depends on the component's state. The final section of our main component contains the handle extract function used to extract a random number from the list of available numbers. Removing it from the list of available number here and adding the same number at the list of extracted numbers. We can say that calling this function we are mutating the component's state with an action. I'm using these terms in order to have a clear vision later on how to enter in the mindset of Vuex. Oh yes, I forgot the template section of our main component. It contains the extract button calling our mutation, the header displaying the last extracted number, and 2 subcomponents displaying the 2 lists we had, passing the title and the needed array. The first is from our component data, available numbers, and the second is from computed section, ascending extracted numbers. Last but not least, our subcomponent using passive properties like title and list. Oh, if the tag in the template seems strange, I'm sorry, I'm using Beautify to fake my UI BDAS experience. Beautify is a nice Vue UI library with pre-designed material components, so I can use them in no-brainer mode without even touching CSS. Great. I know, you are thinking, wait, are we testing this useless app? What can go wrong here? Yeah, you are right. I did not test this app at the beginning, but it's very useful for understanding later on how to test components which uses Vuex. We are testing the subcomponent here, mocking the Beautify pre-made components here in the stubs, and passing specific properties here in props data. Then we expect that the mounted component matches our snapshot. Same for the main component. We expect that at the first render it matches the snapshot. Then we test our mutation, mocking the random function here, in order to retrieve predefined values and expecting that the component matches our snapshot at each extraction of numbers. At the very end, here, we restore the mock of the random function. Now, a simple representation of the concept one-way data flow is this one. We have our component state here, represented by a view, a specific view. We can trigger actions from the view that change the state and then the view accordingly, and so on in this one-way cycle. The state is represented by the data and computed section here, for having a nice summary of our flow process. The view is represented by the template, and the actions are the methods in our components. Now, everything seems perfect, right? We have our perfect life cycle, triggering action, changing the state, and updating the view, right? We can end this talk and move on to the next one. No, wait, we have a little big problem here. What if we need to display something outside our main component? For example, in our footer. What if we want to display a count of remaining numbers or the last 5 extracted numbers in the footer? Yeah, in this example it seems strange, but in the retirement home they were constantly asking this information. Maybe they forgot to check for number, or they need to know when they can escape from our companionship. I don't know. But when we need to provide this information, yeah, they ask them a lot of times, trust me. The problem here is that our state is in the main component, sibling of the footer, so we can use property passing directly, like we are using display numbers here. How can we do? Yeah, the first approach can be moving the state into a parent component. Keep in mind that we should have an up component on top of all. We can move the state there, changing home and footer, enabling them to receive numbers as properties, emitting an event when the extract button is clicked in the home component, handling the extract event in the app component, moving method from home to app, and updating tests. Nice and easy, right? Yeah, this approach is very fast and easy in small apps like this one. We can keep the state inside the components where it's used, if there's no need to pass the state to other component, like this example. Another nice thing is that we don't have extra dependency managing the state, so we have only Vue.js, and we can simply test our subcomponents using props data and snapshot. Great. But unfortunately, we have some cons. Multiple views may depend on the same piece of state, like in our example. Actions from different views may need to mutate the same piece of state. This can be messy on big apps. A lot of extra code is needed for passing props and emitting events. And it can be hard to follow state changes on many levels. What if we need to know what is causing a data change? Here it comes, Vuex. What is Vuex? It's on the official website they say is a state management pattern and library for Vue.js applications. It serves as a centralized store for all the components in an application, with rules ensuring that the state can be only mutated in a predictable fashion. And when I should use it? Dan Abramov, the author of Redux, is the Vuex for React. A long time ago said that Flux libraries are like glasses. You will know when you need them. So it's a trade-off between short-term and long-term productivity. If you jump right into Vuex, it may feel verbose and daunting. But if you are building a medium to large scale single application, chances are you have run into situations that make you think about how to better handle state outside of your Vue components. And Vuex will be the natural next step for you. Whoa, another chart. This one represents the Vuex flow. It's similar to the one we saw before. Let me explain. Inside Vuex, we have our state. A component renders based on the state. Then it can dispatch actions that commit mutations, mutating the state and causing a re-render of the component. Please note that actions can use external service like calling API, for example, and mutations can be tracked by DevTools like the official Vue.js DevTool extension for Google Chrome. How can you install Vuex in your project? Yeah, it depends on the structure of your project. You can use the first approach, so pointing directly to the downloaded Vuex script, or you can install it using npm, yarn, or Vue CLI, as you prefer, as you use in your project. Then, for this second option, you need to tell Vue that you are using Vuex, like that. Configuring a store is pretty simple. Using this syntax, you can define the default state here. And a few mutations, for example, causing a mutation in the store state. After that, you can import the store and pass it inside the start function of your Vue app here, enabling the use of the store inside every other component. Let's deep dive into Vuex core concepts. Vuex uses a single state tree. This single source of truth for our application. A single state tree makes it straightforward to locate a specific piece of state and allows us to easily take snapshots of the current app state for debugging purposes. You can also split the state in submodules if you want, but in this talk we use the basic root state, like this. Creating a default state is simple. All you have to do is define the state in the related property. Here, it's an object with a lot of other properties. You can access the state using store.state.property name directory, or you can map the state in a computed property like this, returning the store value of the property, and you can then use in this way. Yeah, we have an helper, mapState. mapState allows us to map the store state with a simple syntax. We can use whatever we want. We can use an arrow function like this one, calling the state and returning state.property. We can also use a string mapping the local computed value to our property name like this one. Or we can also use a function for using a local state variable before renaming the value. For example, here we add to state.count this local count from the component if we need. An easier approach is to use mapState, passing an array of values, like here in the example. It will map to computed properties with the same name. So the example above is the same as this one below. You can use local computed value too. For example, if you need a local computed value using local data, you can without problem. You have to map the state with an object spread operator like this, and then you can add your local computed function. Now, getters. Getters are like computed values for a Vuex store. They are defined as functions using the same state and returning a value. Every time the state used in a getter changes, the getter is recomputed. In this example, every time the count changes, count is even changes too. You can access getter like you access a state property, like we saw before, but using store.getters instead of store.state in the same way. You have also mapGetters that works the same way as the mapState we saw before. Same thing for the advanced usage, using spread operator for adding other computed values. For now, we have only seen how to read from the store, but what if we want to mutate it? We have to create a mutation, a function for changing the state based on an optional payload, like here. In this example, the payload is the value for incrementing the store, but we have a default value of 1 if the mutation is called without parameters. Or we can pass an object for handling multiple parameters. We can pass a single variable, but containing everything we want, like an object with a lot of properties. Now, after that, we can call a mutation in the component using store.commit, passing the mutation name, this one, and it's mandatory, and an optional payload value in this case. Please note that we should map mutations inside the methods section of the component. Oh, there is map mutations helper for mapping mutation in an easier way. We can use it with the array of values, like here, or with an object with aliases, like here. And the object spread operator works here too. Just a final note about mutations. Mutations must be synchronous. Keep in mind that. Why? Well, because we need to have a before and an after snapshot of the state. We can't introduce a callback inside a mutation. It will make that impossible. When the mutation is committed, the callback is not called yet. The same for promise. That is not resolved yet, and there is no way to know when the callback will actually be called on, or the promise resolved. Any state mutation performed in the callback or in the resolve reject is essentially untrackable. You need to call an API or trigger a callback. Yeah, we might need to call API in our applications. Well, you can use actions instead of mutations. But please keep in mind, mutations must be synchronous. Actions are very similar to mutations with a few differences. Actions, instead of mutating the state directly, they are committing mutations. And they contain asynchronous operations and then committing mutations before, during, and after them. Let's look at this concept. You can create an action, keeping in mind that needs to call mutations. In the example, we wait a second before committing an increment of the state here, and we need a related mutation too. A real-world example could be this one, calling an external API service. We commit the start of the request, eventually changing the state, setting to true the flag for the loading spinner, for example. Then we wait for the API results, and then we can commit the success or the failure of our result, passing results.data or the error itself. Please note context as the first parameter of an action. What is this? Well, the context is the current store. We can use commit to commit a mutation, state and getters to access, obviously, state and getters, and dispatch to call other actions. Here you can map actions in view component using map actions inside the method section, and keep in mind they go inside methods like mutations. Now, a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, there was our bingo application. Do you remember? Let's move it to Vuex. Notice that we are creating every single part of the store as an exported constant, like the default state in this example. This way we can test that single part with a single import. We moved the original data here from the home component inside the default store state. Same for computed value. We move it in a getter with the same name, exporting it as a constant value. Then inside the extract number mutation, we move this button click handler we had in the component, acting on a state property instead. We update available numbers and extracted numbers in the state. No need for actions this time, but we can implement them the same way we did for mutations, creating a constant object with the action as property. Now we can finally compose the store using the values we created before, passing them to the store creation. Here. Now we change the home component, removing data and computed values and using them directly from the store, mapping state and getters in the computed section. Having the same name as the original values, we don't need to rename anything else in the component. Our last change is in the methods, here and here, mapping the mutations from the store, this one, and using that mutation as handler of the button click. When a user clicks on the button, the store will automatically commit that mutation, changing the store state and triggering a re-render of our component. Because with map state and map getters, we are listening to changes in the store to our mapped values. A quick recap when moving from component logic to a Vuex store. We should move data properties from the component to the store name state and map them in the computed section of the component. Computed values could become getters mapped in the computed section. Synchronous methods changing the state will be store mutations mapped as methods. Asynchronous methods should be actions mapped as methods. After officially moving all our logic to the store, we need to test that everything is working as expected. As I said before, exporting every single section of the store allows us to easily import that section in our test. This way we can test, for example, the default state, expecting it to be equal to this one. If we add something to the default state, we need to update this test accordingly. Same for getters. We import only that section of the store, but keep in mind that getters are basically functions acting on the store state and returning a value. So we need to call them passing the state property. In this example, we call ascending extracted numbers passing the state chunk we need. There is no need to pass the entire state, just the properties involved in the computation. Then we expect the return value to be this one, a list of sorted number. Mutations are basically function changing the state passed by parameter. In this example, we import the default state here, avoiding to mock it. But often you can simply mock the state with your desired properties and pass it in the mutation state parameters. Here we are mocking the random function as we did before, in order to have not so random value in testing. Then we create the state starting from the default one, and there no special need for that, but I prefer to be safe than sorry, and I check that we have 90 available numbers in the state. I'm calling the mutation, passing the state object here, and expecting that after the call, the state is changed in my desired way. I'm adding another call to be sure everything works as expected. Then we can restore our random mock and finish this test. Now, we don't have a real action, but we can keep in mind this example: committing the start of a request, making the request, and committing success or failure based on the response we obtain. First thing to do is mock Axios. Axios is a library for making REST API call. So we mock Axios because we don't need to call the real API endpoint, and we mock the get function of Axios in this example. Later on, we can mock the return value directly, or use mock resolved value and mock rejected value to mock asynchronous results with success or failure. Here we are testing the success, for example, mocking the resolved value here, and mocking the context commit function passed to the action call. Note that this test is asynchronous because we need to wait the end of the asynchronous action here. We check that commit is called with get record request. Then Axios is called with our desired endpoint, and then commit called again with the success and our return value from our mocked API call. Same for failures, mocking the Axios get with a rejected value here. We then call the action, raising an error and failing tests if not, just to be sure. In the catch branch, we check that commit is called with get record request, Axios called with our endpoint, and then commit another time called with the get records failure and our errors. After testing our store, we should test components too. We can shallow mount our component passing the original store, testing like nothing's happened, but this is not suggested. Why? Well, it's a fast and easy approach. We don't have to mock a chunk of the store or something else. This could be used in integration testing, but unit tests should be related only to the component without relying on external implementations. And we have less control over store mocking and external calls, so we need another approach. The approach is that we can mock the store, creating a local instance of Vue.js here for the test, and adding the usage of Vuex here. Then we can create a store mocking the desired chunk of the state, passing whatever we want: a custom default state, a custom getter, mocked mutations and actions. Then we put the creation of the store inside of a before each statement, so it's created before each test case. Declaring variables outside the statement let us to use them later on in each test case. We can now mount the component passing our mocked state, mocked store, and local view instance. After that, we can check for snapshots and continue our unit tests. We can also optionally check that a button click is triggering the desired mutation or action. The tricky part is mocking the store. In this example, I created a mocked store that is the same before each test case, but you can have a specific mocked store that is different from test to test, causing different snapshots. Each test case is specific, so you can act accordingly to your needs. Time for a quick recap, I think. What we learned today? Well, first we saw that Vuex can help a lot in medium and large projects, making our application more organized and predictable. Then we learned how to install and configure a Vuex store, moving away from components logic. Last but not least, we saw how to unit test our store and how to mock a store chunk in component testing. I hope you enjoyed this talk. Here's a bunch of links to the official Vuex and VueTest utils documentation. The last link is the example bingo extraction app, our wonderful application. And you can see there the results of the migration to Vuex and check the commits history. This is a recorded video, but if you have questions, I should be here live for that, or you can contact me wherever you prefer. These are my social contacts. Bye.
Dude, that was great. I was starting to write some of my extra notes for questions.
Yeah.
How did you like your own talk? Was it fun to look back at what you said?
Yeah, kind of strange listening to my own voice, but yeah.
Yes, exactly. I must say, you make it look so easy. You really are slow, concise, great. You even made the unit tests seem like, oh, I can do that. So that is very good. This is what a talk like this should be doing. So good for you, man. This is great. So let's see if we have some people in the chat. Like Igor asked, I think you already answered, but let's also answer it for the audience. What is the equivalent for props data when using class components?
Okay, there is no equivalent. We can use props data also for class component because it's a mounting option for VueTest utils. So you can basically use props data to pass properties to a mounting component.
Yeah. And so I think there was also from Alessio here the question in Italian. Do you mind maybe explaining what he's asking and then you can answer?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, he's asking. So he is telling us that he often use something like component dispatching an action. Inside that action, he commits a mutation, and he gets the state using getters inside the component, and is asking why I'm using something like map state and map mutations in component. So if an over engineering or flavor question,
exactly.
His method is like React Redux style. Can I say React in this conference?
You can.
I'm sorry.
Because, of course.
Yeah. It's like an approach using only action inside components and leaving the store handling mutation to the state and getting the state from map state or map mutation. Directly from getters, it's not a good idea for me, because getters are like computed values in the store. So every time a state change, every getter using the state gets recomputed. So not always. I suggested to not use always getters to retrieve a single state, but only use getters to retrieve computed state data. Something
Actually,
like is even.
Yeah, exactly. If you have to compute some data inside your state, only then use it. Because this was one of my questions I just noted down. Because some people like to use getters for everything because it's clean in the brain, right?
Yeah.
And other people are more like, I just go directly to the state and I just grab what I want. But it's so cool that that question was also there in Italian. I just didn't understand. So for me, I kind of mix it up. I tend to go state directly. If I don't have to change anything, I just get it, put it in. But if it needs to be a combination of multiple things, I will use a getter, because then it's actually computed, right?
Yeah, exactly. Also, if you need to change something from the state, but only for a single component, I'd like to suggest to use that computed value inside the component and not in the getter, in order to have a light store.
Yes, because what I do enjoy though from stores is that you can put all the logic in the store, like your actions and mutations, and then just unit test your store. Because if you do that well, it's pretty easy, right? After that.
Yeah, exactly. I have a big problem. I do a lot of unit testing in the store, but not so for components. So I'm thankful for the talk of this morning
From
about
Jessica.
Cypress, because
this is amazing, right?
I have to use more integration testing and component testing.
Okay, so I have a bit of an opinion question for you.
Yeah.
So let's say we have a filter/faceted search page. So you have a result list and you have filters on the sides. But inside that whole page, there's like, let's say 6 components. There's one with the filters where you click. There's one that shows you how many results. There's a list of items. And so all those components use data from the store to show its state, right? When I click on a filter, something changes. Maybe an AJAX call happens and it shows a new list. So in your opinion, should each of those components read directly the state from the store with map state, or should it retrieve props from the component that's around it that talks to the store?
Nice question. It depends.
Because I've been dealing with this one, so I'm really interested to see what your opinion is.
Okay. My opinion is I try to create 2 types of components. First type is something called the presentational component, where they use properties, passive properties, to display something. And they basically are components that doesn't know what there is inside the store.
Exactly. Like a button or a header or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
The other type of components are something called container components. I'm using this from Dan Abramov.
Yes, I was just going to say, it sounds a little React-like to me, with context components and here we go.
I think I'm coming from React Redux world. So basically I'm using this approach also in Vuex. And using container components, you can have a single parent component looking to the store, sending events, emitting events, and so on, and getting the state from the store. and passing properties to its subcomponents. Yeah, you have to keep in mind if there is something like a lot of subcomponents in a subcomponent tree, you can have more container components, one inside of the others.
Yeah, exactly.
But I tend to have a few components listening to the store and a lot of presentational components displaying only passed properties.
I think this does work well in React because components are just functions. They're so simple, so you can wrap them all the time. So it almost feels easier to do as like it was designed that way. I think in Vue there's a little bit more contained into it, unless we go to the composition API where it might change again.
Yeah.
But so what is your opinion here? If we talk about composition API, how important is the store to keep central state still if we can do things with the use and the on and the composables?
I never really use the composition API for now, but I think it's something like the React hooks.
The hooks, of course.
So we can use that in a small application, but I think in medium to large application, an approach using a Vuex store is more modularized, so we can put everything inside its own module and use
especially
it
with the
from
namespaces of the store, right? That actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, namespace modules are the default, I think, because I can split my entire store in submodules.
Yeah, and I use Nuxt a lot, as you can see by my hat probably.
Yeah.
And it basically does that automatically for you. So if you're in your store folder, just add separate files, they become namespaced modules in the store for you. And that helps a lot. And so this is what I said in one of the older talks as well. Like we still need Vuex now with the composition API? And I think the answer is definitely yes, because if you don't, let's say you have this big component that we just talked about, that filter list thing, you need to keep some sort of central state. And if you want to do that with like the composables, you're going to put on a global level some composables that keep something in memory, but you don't really know what it is. It worries me a little, but maybe we haven't used it enough, right? There might be a way to do it well, but actually I'm kind of happy with the store because it's all my logic in one place. It makes me happy as a developer, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways, let's see what the composition API has to bring, because it still needs to come to like full force with everybody using it more and more and more. And I think there will be a life for both Vuex and composition API. So we're nearing the end of our conversation and also the conference. Is there anything else, Denny, that you would like to share with our audience?
No, except I need definitely to test Vue.js 3 with Vuex and everything else.
It's very interesting, I think.
I have a lot of side projects, but very small time to test and to try everything. But
I feel you, man.
But if you need to have a centralized state for your application, you need to use Vuex. I suggest you to use Vuex.
Cool. Thank you, Denny, so much for your talk and being so precise and teaching us all this stuff. I hope to see you soon in another conference. Cheers, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, Tim. Bye, everyone.